Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to try and build an entire world, a whole story with a beginning, middle, and end, using just 10 simple words. It's a fun little experiment in storytelling. Let's see how it goes. So when you think about it, how do you build a story from scratch? I mean, we usually jump to the big stuff, right? Characters, plot, setting. But what if the real building blocks are way, way smaller? What if it all just starts with the words themselves? And that is exactly our challenge for today. We're taking 10, just 10, simple words. We're going to define them, really get to know them, and then see if we can weave them into a complete story. This is storytelling at its most basic, most fundamental level. Okay, so every good story needs a frame, right? You need a beginning and you need an end. So before we dive into the action, let's set up the two goalposts that are going to hold our whole narrative together. And here they are, our starting point and our finish line. On one hand, we have the before, just the pure potential of a single seed in the ground. And on the other, the after, that final delicious slice of pumpkin pie. Our entire story is basically the journey from point A to point B. So our first anchor word is before. This is pretty straightforward, right? It's just the state of things before our story really kicks off. Think of it as our point A. And of course, its opposite, after, is our point B. That's the moment when everything's said and done, all the action is over. Now that we have our timeline set, we can start filling in the blanks. But you know, a seed doesn't just magically turn into a pumpkin by itself. It needs a little push, right? A catalyst, some kind of action to get the ball rolling. And this is where the story really starts. And it all boils down to a super simple two-step process. First, there's an action. Someone or something has to water the seed. Then you get a reaction. The plant will grow. It's pure cause and effect, the engine that drives pretty much any story. Now, the word water is kind of cool because it can be a noun or a verb, a thing or an action. For our story, we're zeroing in on the verb, that act of nurturing that really kicks the whole thing off. And what's the result of that action? Grow. This is basically the central theme of our entire story. It's all about that transformation from this teeny tiny seed into something so much bigger. All right, let's recap. We've got our before and our after. We've started the action, but what does that growth actually look like? This next part of our story is all about that physical transformation. Well, it happens in a really clear order. First, you get a vine stretching out. Then, from that vine, you see flowers start to blossom. And finally, from one of those blossoms, our star player, the pumpkin, starts to form. So first up is the vine. You can think of this as the foundation, the lifeline that's going to support everything that comes next. After that, the flowers blossom. And this isn't just for looks, okay? This is a super critical stage. It's that moment of potential where our pumpkin can finally start to happen. And then, finally, the pumpkin itself arrives. This is it. This is the payoff for all that work, all that earlier growth. Our main character has officially made its entrance. But hang on, a story isn't just a list of things that happened, right? To make it feel real, to make it richer, we need description. We need words that tell us about the qualities of the things in our story. And that's where our last three words come in. They add all that crucial detail and texture. Think about it. The vine has to be strong to hold up that heavy pumpkin. The final pie is sweet. That's a key detail you can almost taste. And it's served in thin slices, which tells us about how it's finally presented. All right, we've looked at all 10 of our building blocks. We have our timeline, our action, our characters, and our descriptions. Now, it's time to put it all together. So here they are, our 10 magic words. Before and after, they set the frame. Water and grow, that's our action. Vine, blossom, and pumpkin, those are our subjects, our characters. And strong, sweet, and thin give us all those juicy details. And here it is, the payoff. We can actually boil this whole journey down into a single sentence that connects everything. From just 10 simple words, a whole story comes to life. So what this really shows us is that even with the simplest tools imaginable, you can build a complete narrative. Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we can create this little world with just 10 words, what other stories are just waiting to be built all around us, just by paying attention to the words we use every single day? So what story will you build?